So if you break your arm today, the process is actually incredibly straightforward.
Right, yeah. You just go to the hospital.
Exactly. You go in, the X-ray machine hums, and, it produces this clear image with a jagged white line. And the doctor just points at the screen and says, well, there's the fracture.
It's totally mechanical, highly precise.
It really is. But if a fifth grader fails a standardized math test today, society just kind of points at the low score and yells, look at this failing student or look at this failing school.
Yeah, we just blame the symptom.
Right. We have absolutely no idea what is actually broken. Like, we don't know if that child's foundational math skills crumbled, say, 3 years ago and just no one noticed.
Or if they even had the right materials to begin with.
Exactly. We don't know if the school just couldn't afford a new textbook, so they were learning from, outdated stuff. Or, honestly, we don't know if that kid just hasn't eaten since yesterday afternoon and couldn't concentrate.
Which is a huge factor, yeah.
Our whole educational diagnostic machine is completely broken. But today's deep dive into this really radical blueprint called the Educational Commons, AI and the Mastered Plumb Line, well, it proposes we just tear that broken machine down to the studs.
It really is a total architectural teardown. I mean, because right now what we are doing is basically the equivalent of looking at that broken arm, shrugging, and prescribing the patient a slightly different colored cast.
Right, like that's going to help.
Yeah, just hoping that fixes the internal bone structure.
Yeah.
We don't diagnose the root cause of educational failure. We just measure the symptoms and will apply punishments.
It's wild.
And what this framework attempts to do is step back and ask a genuinely terrifying question. Like, what if the entire foundation we are standing on is fundamentally crooked?
And, that matters to you, the listener, right now. Whether you are a parent trying to navigate your kid's homework, or a taxpayer looking at municipal budgets, or just someone who has to live and work in this society, the way we educate the next generation is basically the invisible architecture of the world you inhabit.
Absolutely. It affects everyone.
So this deep dive we are unpacking today, it isn't about moving a testing window by a week. It proposes dismantling how we fund schools, redefining who or honestly what is actually doing the teaching, and literally rewriting the calendar months that students spend in a classroom.
Yet to understand just how sweeping this is, we kind of have to start with the core metaphor that anchors this entire philosophy, which is the common plumb line.
Right, the plumb line.
Yeah, if you've ever watched a mason build a brick wall, you've seen plumb line. It is incredibly simple technology. I mean, it's just a string with a heavy weight attached to the bottom.
Just relying on gravity.
Exactly. Gravity pulls the weight toward the center of the earth, and that creates an absolute, perfectly straight vertical line.
It's pure physics. It doesn't negotiate with anybody.
It really doesn't. A plumb line does not care about the builder's ego. It doesn't care if the contractor is, screaming that the wall is straight.
Or how expensive the bricks were.
Right. It doesn't care how much money the developer spent. It simply and ruthlessly measures objective reality. And the argument here in the text is that the American educational system has been building a wall without a plumb line for, over a century.
Wow.
The wall is leaning so far over, it's honestly a miracle it hasn't completely collapsed on the students sitting beneath it.
So, okay, if the wall is leaning, what is actually causing the structural failure? Because the instinctive reaction, especially the political reaction, is usually to just blame the teachers or, blame the parents.
Always.
But this blueprint goes totally out of its way to say that's a misdiagnosis. It points the finger at something called the purchasing lottery. So walk me through the mechanics of that. Like, how does a purchasing lottery actually work in the real world?
Okay, so let's look at the operational reality of how knowledge physically gets into a classroom today.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just magically appear out of nowhere. A school district has to buy it.
Right, with their budget.
Yeah. And this creates a system where a district's purchasing power literally dictates the boundary of a child's reality. So let's take a hypothetical well-funded district in, say, a high property tax suburb.
Okay, the classic wealthy suburb.
Right. They have a budget surplus. So they go to the educational publishers and they buy the absolute state-of-the-art materials.
That shiny new stuff.
Exactly. They buy the 2026 biology textbooks, they get the updated digital supplements, the interactive physics simulations, the high-speed broadband to actually run those simulations, and robust library subscriptions.
So their students are basically interacting with the absolute frontier of human knowledge.
They are. But then, 20 miles down the highway, you have a district where the property tax base is completely hollowed out.
Right. The other side of the coin.
Yeah, and that school board is sitting in a room having this horrific zero-sum debate. Like the roof in the middle school is leaking and the boiler is failing.
Oh, man.
They literally have to choose between keeping the building warm in January or buying new fourth-grade math curriculums.
That's a brutal choice. So what do?
Well, what happens is they delay the textbook adoption. They tell the teachers, hey, just make the 2014 textbooks last a little longer.
Even though the pages are probably falling out.
Literally falling out. And the
Yeah.
science in those books is a decade old. They cut the digital subscriptions just to balance the budget. They reduce the library hours. So the knowledge environment around that student physically shrinks.
I want to pause on that because when you describe it as a purchasing lottery, it makes it sound so arbitrary, which it is.
Completely arbitrary.
It's not a meritocracy at all. A 7-year-old doesn't choose the tax base they are born into.
No, they don't.
But here is where that X-ray analogy from earlier really hits hard for me. Because it's not just that the funding is unequal. I mean, we all know school funding is unequal. That's been debated for decades. The really insidious part is what happens next, right during the testing phase.
Yes. This is where we get into the diagnostic muddy waters. Society takes the student from the wealthy district, the one with the updated simulations, the well-fed student body, the stable building, and measures them against the student from the underfunded district.
The kid trying to learn physics from a book printed before we even discovered the Higgs boson.
Exactly. We hand them the exact same standardized test. And when the well-resourced student scores higher, society records that as a difference in intellectual merit or a difference in school quality.
It's completely irrational. I mean, it's like entering two people into a marathon. But right before the race starts, you force one of the runners to start 10 miles backward, and you make them wear shoes made of solid lead.
That's a perfect analogy.
And then, when the other runner crosses the finish line 3 hours earlier, you don't hand them a gold medal and declare them a biologically superior human being. You don't say, wow, they really trained so much harder.
Right, you would look at the lead shoes.
Exactly. But our educational metrics do exactly that. We look at test scores, we look at college readiness metrics and school rankings, and we just judge the runner while completely ignoring the lead shoes.
And that right there is why the blueprint demands we establish a calibrated national learning foundation. The argument is that we cannot measure a student's true potential or even a teacher's true effectiveness until every single student in the country is standing on the exact same academic floor.
You have to isolate the variable.
Exactly. You have to remove the variables of poverty and underfunding from the curriculum itself.
But wait, I have to jump in here. Because the phrase National Learning Foundation instantly triggers alarm bells for a lot of people.
Oh, sure. It sounds very centralized.
Yeah, it sounds like the federal government swooping in to mandate this centralized, homogenized gray curriculum. People picture a factory stamping out identical robot children from Maine to California, completely erasing local culture. Like, how does this model avoid turning into some authoritarian nightmare?
It avoids it through a very specific architectural distinction in the text. The difference between a floor and a ceiling.
Okay, a floor and a ceiling.
Right. The model is explicitly designed as a common floor, not a forced ceiling. The plumb line does not dictate the entire house. It just ensures the foundation won't crack.
So it's just the baseline.
Exactly. In practice, this means we guarantee the absolute highest quality baseline beneath the child. Every student, regardless of ZIP code, has guaranteed access to the same world-class instruction in foundational mathematics, reading comprehension, the scientific method, historical timelines, and constitutional structures. That is the floor.
So the local community still gets to build their own house on top of it.
Yes. Once that floor is secure, a district in coastal Louisiana can build extensive local ecology and marine biology programs right on top of it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Or a district in rural Montana might integrate agricultural science and local indigenous history. A school in New York City might focus heavily on performing arts or international languages.
So the teachers are still bringing their own flavor to it.
Completely. Teachers are still bringing their unique humanity, their care, their specific local knowledge into the room. But the mathematical and linguistic foundation that the student stands on is impenetrable. It no longer relies on whether the local mayor can pass a bond measure just to buy textbooks.
Okay, conceptually, a common floor makes total sense to me. But logistically, like, how do you physically distribute a common floor of knowledge to, 13,000 different school districts across a continent without it turning into a massive bureaucratic disaster?
That's the big question.
Because the traditional answer would be, Let's get a committee together, we write a really big official textbook, and we literally mail a physical copy to every kid in America. But this blueprint argues that the physical textbook itself is actually the root of the disease.
Yes, the physical textbook is fundamentally incompatible with the speed of modern reality. Let's look at the mechanics of textbook publishing for a second. It is a glacial process.
Very slow.
Take a massive market like Texas or California. They have these huge textbook adoption boards. Publishers spend years writing a curriculum to meet specific state standards. By the time the book is finally approved, printed, shipped, and placed on a child's desk, the information inside it is already aging.
It's essentially a time capsule.
It really is. And if an error is discovered in that book, or if a major scientific breakthrough happens the literal day after the book is printed, that book cannot be updated.
You're just stuck with it.
You are.
Right.
The error sits on the desk for 7 to 10 years until the district's adoption cycle comes around again and they actually have the budget to buy the next edition. The physical book traps the student in the past.
So, to replace the dead textbook, the blueprint introduces this new concept, the educational commons. And it is very quick to warn against thinking of this as just an online PDF, right?
Right. It's not a tablet with a digital copy of the exact same old textbook.
Because a PDF is just a dead textbook behind a piece of glass.
Exactly. The educational commons is a completely different paradigm. The text describes it as a shared national digital learning infrastructure. Think of it as a continuously maintained knowledge service.
A knowledge service, okay.
It encompasses the reading materials, the interactive simulations, the diagnostic assessments, primary source documents, audio translations, and crucially, an AI-driven instructional engine.
And what really fascinates me is how it structures this knowledge. Because it doesn't just dump a million Wikipedia articles on a kid and say, good luck, have fun. It divides the curriculum into two distinct, constantly interacting layers.
Yes, the stable foundation and the living frontier.
Right. So break down the mechanics of those two layers for me. How do they actually function in a student's daily life?
Okay, so let's start with the stable foundation. This is the bedrock. This layer contains the durable knowledge that society requires for baseline cohesion, the stuff that doesn't radically change from year to year.
Like math and grammar.
Exactly. The mechanics of phonetic reading, the rules of grammar, basic arithmetic, fractions, geometry, the text of the U.S. Constitution, the chronological timeline of the Civil War, the basic steps of the scientific method.
Things that are pretty much set in stone.
Right. This layer is highly sequenced and very carefully guarded. It provides the cognitive scaffolding a child needs to just make sense of the world.
Because you can't just throw a kid into a debate about quantum mechanics if they literally don't know how to multiply yet.
You can't. The stable foundation builds the architecture of the mind. But once that architecture is beginning to take shape, the system introduces the second layer, which is the living frontier.
And what is that exactly?
This is where the student encounters the field as it is developing in real time in the actual world.
Give me a concrete example of how a student interacts with that. Because if a kid is just learning biology, how does the living frontier change a random Tuesday morning class?
Okay, let's say an 8th grade biology class is studying cellular structure. The stable foundation provides the core concepts, right? The nucleus, the mitochondria, the cell membrane. That's the baseline.
Got it.
But suddenly, on a Monday, a major peer-reviewed paper is published regarding a massive new discovery in CRISPR gene editing, or maybe a breakthrough in how microbiomes affect the human immune system.
Okay.
Within days, the educational commons ingests that new discovery. The AI layer translates the core concepts of that high-level research paper down to an 8th grade reading level.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it generates a simulation showing how the new gene editing technique works. And on Thursday, when the student logs in, the living frontier presents this new discovery right alongside their foundational lesson on the nucleus.
That is wild. So it's dynamically bridging the gap between like a research lab in Switzerland and a middle school desk in Ohio almost instantly.
Instantly. Yeah.
Or take a civics class. A student learns the structure of the judicial branch from the stable foundation, like how a case moves from a district court to the Supreme Court.
Right, basic mechanics.
But then the living frontier is actively pulling in the audio of oral arguments from a Supreme Court case being argued that exact week.
Yes.
Like they are reading simplified briefs of a live constitutional debate.
And this creates a profound shift in the student's psychology. Because the old textbook model taught students that knowledge was basically just a dead pile of facts.
Yeah, just stuff you memorized.
It was a brick you memorized on Tuesday so you could spit it back out on a Friday in multiple choice test. It felt stagnant. It felt totally disconnected from reality.
But I do have to push back here for a second because honestly, this sounds incredibly overwhelming.
How so?
Well, if you take a 14-year-old and you expose them to the raw, bleeding edge of genetic research and constitutional law and new archaeological discoveries every single week, aren't they just going to drown in information overload?
It's a valid concern.
Like, how does a teenager actually process a constantly updating stream of global knowledge without completely shutting down from cognitive fatigue?
That is a critical operational question, and the blueprint actually addresses it by redefining the whole purpose of the living frontier.
Okay, what's the purpose then?
The goal is absolutely not to force the student to memorize the frontier. They are not going to be tested on the minutia of the gene editing paper that was just published on Monday.
Oh, okay, so they aren't graded on it.
No, the goal is epistemological. It teaches the student how knowledge works.
Interesting.
By seeing the stable foundation and the living frontier side by side, the student learns that human understanding is an ongoing process. They see that science isn't just a list of facts. It's a method of inquiry where claims are debated, evidence is weighed, and old theories are constantly revised by new data.
Ah, so it's exposing them to the friction of knowledge.
Precisely. They learn about peer review. They learn that smart people disagree. They learn to identify stronger and weaker arguments. It actually respects their intellect by bringing them into the adult reality of discovery rather than just hiding them in a sanitized, static textbook.
Okay, I see the philosophical beauty of that, I really do. But let's look at the sheer logistics for a second.
Sure.
If you have a curriculum that is constantly updating, pulling in Supreme Court briefs, translating peer-reviewed science, adjusting the reading level dynamically for a kid who reads at a 6th grade level versus a kid sitting next to them who reads at an 8th grade level and doing this for millions of students simultaneously, a human teacher cannot do that. You just cannot ask a single human being standing in front of 30 kids to act as the real-time mediator of a global, dynamically updating knowledge stream. It would break them.
It is biologically impossible. And that is exactly why the blueprint introduces the most radical and, frankly, the most disruptive shift in the entire framework.
Which is artificial intelligence as the new instructional faculty layer.
Exactly.
And this is where people get really defensive because right now, the culturally acceptable way to talk about AI in education is very timid.
Very cautious.
Yeah. We say, oh, AI is just a little helper tool. It will help teachers grade papers a little faster or maybe draft the lesson plan. But the human teacher will always be the primary deliverer of knowledge. The human will always sit on the instructional throne. Right. But this blueprint looks at that timid framing and completely annihilates it.
It really does.
Yeah.
It argues that keeping the human on the instructional throne out of a sense of tradition or just job security is actually a betrayal of the student. The central question of education cannot be, how do we protect the adult's status in the room? The only moral question is, how do we build the most accurate, individualized, and equitable learning experience for the child?
Right.
And the brutal reality is that when it comes to the pure transmission and diagnosis of academic knowledge, a sophisticated AI vastly outperforms a human being.
So walk me through the mechanics of that diagnosis, because earlier you mentioned the X-ray analogy and how our current system can't see the broken bone.
Yeah.
How does an AI diagnostic layer actually see inside a student's mind in a way a human teacher simply can't?
It comes down to the ability to map cognitive dependencies at scale. So let's imagine a high school sophomore sitting in an algebra class.
Okay.
They are trying to solve quadratic equations, and they just keep getting the answers wrong. A human teacher who is managing 30 other teenagers in a 50-minute period walks by, looks at the paper, and sees a bunch of red X's.
Right.
The teacher's diagnosis is usually localized to the current topic. They think, oh, this student doesn't understand quadratic equations. I need to explain the quadratic formula again.
Because the teacher only sees the final output. They just see the failure at the end of the assembly line.
Exactly. But an AI tutor isn't just looking at the final answer. It is tracking every single keystroke, every hesitation, every specific type of error the student makes as they work through the problem in the educational commons.
That's a huge amount of data.
It is. And the AI references a massive internal knowledge graph.
Wait, explain the knowledge graph. How does it trace the error backward?
Okay, so the knowledge graph is this vast web of how every mathematical concept connects to every other concept. When the student makes a specific mistake in factoring the polynomial, The AI recognizes the exact pattern of that mistake.
Okay.
It realizes, wait, this isn't a failure to understand the quadratic formula. This specific error pattern happens when a student doesn't understand the distributive property of multiplication.
Oh, wow.
And then it traces it back even further. It gives the student a rapid, invisible microassessment, and it discovers that the student's foundational understanding of multiplying negative numbers actually crumbled back in the 7th grade.
That is insane. So the student isn't failing 10th grade algebra, they are failing 7th grade arithmetic, but it's only manifesting now.
Precisely. The AI isolates the structural crack. And unlike a human teacher who has to move the whole class forward to the next chapter on Wednesday, the AI instantly halts the algebra lesson for that specific student.
Just stops.
Yes. It seamlessly loops the student back to a highly targeted, interactive module on multiplying negative numbers. It gives them 10 practice problems. It uses visual simulations.
And it doesn't get frustrated.
Never. Because the AI has infinite patience, it doesn't sigh. It doesn't look at his watch. It doesn't make the student feel stupid in front of their peers. It patiently rebuilds the 7th grade foundation and then smoothly bridges them back into 10th grade algebra.
A human being cannot do that for 30 kids simultaneously. They just can't. You'd need 30 private tutors in the room.
Exactly.
Another example from the text that blew my mind was the language and reading level isolation. Like, a student might completely understand the scientific concept of photosynthesis.
Right.
If you ask them verbally, they can perfectly explain how a plant turns sunlight into food, but they fail the written biology test.
And a human system just says, failing biology student.
Yes. But the AI looks at the data and says, no, this student's scientific reasoning is actually in the 90th percentile. But the reading level of this specific test question is 2 grades above their current literacy level.
They aren't failing biology, they're tripping over the vocabulary.
Exactly. So the AI instantly, dynamically rewrites the biology question to match their exact reading level, allowing their true scientific knowledge to be accurately measured.
And that is the essence of clean measurement. It separates the variables, it stops punishing students for things outside the immediate scope of the lesson.
I mean, I get the operational superiority of it, but I do have to voice the visceral fear that people have when they hear this.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Parents hear AI instructional layer, and they imagine a dystopian nightmare. They picture a cold, sterile room where their child is strapped to a chair, staring at a glowing screen, just being lectured by a lifeless robotic algorithm all day.
Yes.
They feel like we are stripping the humanity out of childhood.
That fear is deeply, deeply ingrained. And it comes from a misunderstanding of what technology replaces versus what it elevates. The blueprint uses a brilliant historical analogy to diffuse this exact panic.
Oh, the calculator one.
Yes. Think about the invention of the electronic calculator. When calculators became ubiquitous, there was massive panic that humans would just forget how to do math, that we were outsourcing our brains to machines.
Right, I remember those arguments.
But what actually happened? A calculator can perform long division 1,000,000 times faster than a human. But a calculator does not replace human mathematical reasoning. It just automated the rote computation so the human mind could focus on higher-level physics and engineering.
Or the telescope. The text uses the telescope, too. A telescope can see a galaxy millions of light years away. The human eye cannot do that.
No.
But inventing the telescope didn't make astronomers obsolete. It didn't dehumanize the study of the stars. It actually birthed modern astronomy. We don't deny the power of the tool just to protect the ego of the naked eye.
Exactly. The blueprint calls this role clarification. When we introduce AI as the primary instructional layer, human teachers do not disappear. They are not fired.
Okay, so what do?
Instead, they are finally liberated from the impossible, exhausting task of trying to force 30 different brains to learn the exact same concept at the exact same speed. Their role shifts to the profound, vital tasks that a machine cannot possibly perform.
Let's map that out. If the AI is teaching the algebra and the grammar, what is the human adult actually doing in the room all day?
The human shifts to the realm of embodiment, physical safety, social and emotional development, mentorship, moral formation. Let's go back to our biology class example.
Okay.
The AI teaches the foundational mechanics of cellular division. It handles the assessment. But the human educator is the one who takes the students outside to the local wetlands to collect water samples.
Oh, I see.
The human facilitates the messy physical lab experiment where kids have to collaborate and actually argue about their findings.
Because a machine can't teach a teenager how to resolve a conflict with their lab partner.
Exactly. A machine cannot be a moral role model. An AI tutor cannot look at a 14-year-old walking into the classroom and instantly recognize just from their body language
What?
that something terrible happened at home that morning.
Right. It doesn't have empathy.
The human educator becomes a coach, a community builder, a guardian of the physical space. The issue is not human versus AI in some sort of sci-fi war.
It's a partnership.
Yes. The issue is utilizing the right tool for the right job. Use the AI for individualized cognitive transmission. Use the human for embodied social and moral formation.
It's about moving our own adult egos out of the way of the child's actual needs.
Exactly.
But, giving an AI system this much power, literally making it the central nervous system of American education, it raises massive, blaring alarms about governance and control.
Oh, absolutely, it should.
Because we aren't talking about some benevolent AI god here. We are talking about software built by corporations. If we transition to this educational commons, who actually owns the plumb line? What about bias? What about tech monopolies? Are we just handing the minds of the next generation over to a few billionaires in Silicon Valley?
The blueprint is highly aggressive on this exact point. It acknowledges that if we leave the creation of the educational commons entirely to the unregulated free market, we will simply replace the old purchasing lottery with a new algorithmic inequality.
So walk me through what algorithmic inequality looks like in practice. Because right now, the fear is just that rich schools get iPads and poor schools get old laptops, but this is deeper than hardware, right?
Much deeper. If this is privatized, the wealthy districts will spend massive amounts of local tax dollars to buy the quote-unquote platinum AI tutor from a top-tier tech company.
Okay.
This premium AI will have the lowest latency, the most nuanced conversational abilities, the most advanced knowledge graphs, and zero advertisements.
And the poorer districts?
Meanwhile, the underfunded district will be forced to use a free, ad-supported knockoff AI.
Oh, no.
The knockoff AI will have a sluggish response time, it will hallucinate facts, its logic pathways will be brittle, and it might even subtly steer students toward corporate-sponsored content. You would just be digitizing and supercharging the exact same inequality we have today.
So the foundation of the house is still crooked. It's just a digital foundation now.
Exactly.
How does the framework propose we stop that? Because tech companies aren't going to build a multi-billion-dollar AI infrastructure for free out of the goodness of their hearts.
No, they aren't. So the blueprint insists that the core of the educational commons must be legally structured as public interest infrastructure.
What does that mean exactly?
Think of it like the interstate highway system or the foundational protocols of the internet itself. Private companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, along with universities and state agencies, can contract to build and maintain the engine. But the foundational model, the plumb line itself, must be shared, auditable, and transparent.
Transparent meaning what, though? Because neural networks are notoriously black boxes. You ask it a question, it spits out an answer. And even the engineers sometimes don't know exactly how it got there.
Right, so the educational model requires strict version tracking and explicit bias auditing.
Okay, how does that work?
If a parent wants to know exactly how the curriculum on the Civil War changed between Tuesday and Thursday, there must be a public ledger showing that exact adjustment.
Ah, so you can trace it.
Yes. If the AI is consistently adjusting the reading level down for a specific demographic of students, independent auditors must be able to flag that bias and correct it immediately.
That makes sense.
The blueprint even demands that there must always be offline and print options available to ensure the system isn't entirely dependent on uninterrupted broadband. It is a highly defensive posture against technological surrender.
Okay, let's talk about the money.
Always comes down to the money.
Because when you digitize the core curriculum and distribute it through a national commons, the economic efficiencies are staggering. I mean, think about the billions of dollars public schools spend right now. They spend fortunes replacing physical textbooks every few years.
Billions.
Every single one of the 13,000 districts has a bloated administrative team just trying to negotiate subscription deals with ed tech vendors, resulting in this massive duplication of effort. If you centralize the digital knowledge spine, you save billions.
You do.
But I am going to push back incredibly hard right here.
Go ahead.
You were telling me that we are going to generate massive budgetary savings by letting an AI handle the core instruction.
Yes.
Well, I know how municipal governments work. I know how state legislatures work. When has a politician ever looked at a massive budget surplus and said, let's keep this money in the school system.
Fair point.
The immediate, cynical, and highly probable outcome is that lawmakers will use the efficiency of the AI commons as an excuse to completely defund the physical school.
Right, they'll say we don't need it.
Exactly. They will say, hey, the AI is teaching the kids. We don't need these expensive buildings. We don't need librarians. We don't need counselors. Let's just send the kids home, stick them behind a screen in their living room, fire half the staff, and use the surplus to cut taxes or pave highways.
This is a very real threat.
How does this framework actually prevent that dystopian defunding spiral?
Your cynicism is entirely historically justified. But the blueprint anticipates this exact political maneuver, and it explicitly labels it a cheap and degraded version of the idea.
Okay, so it sees it coming.
It does. The entire philosophical architecture of this framework relies on a non-negotiable economic pact. The money saved on the knowledge access side must be legally locked in and forcefully redirected into the living needs of the physical school.
The living body of the school.
Yes. The blueprint argues that the digital commons provides the shared curriculum spine, but the physical school must be the living body. You cannot separate them.
So the savings have to stay in the building.
Absolutely. The massive savings from the old textbook lottery must be used to aggressively fund the physical reality of the child.
Yeah.
We are talking about universally free, high-quality school breakfasts and lunches.
That's huge.
We are talking about repairing HVAC systems so classrooms are safe and breathable. We are talking about doubling the number of mental health counselors, expanding the physical education programs, buying musical instruments, and outfitting actual physical chemistry labs.
Because if you don't do that, the AI tutor is basically useless. There's a line from the text that I keep thinking about. Hungry children do not learn the same way as fed children.
It's so true.
It is such a brutal, obvious truth that our current system just sweeps under the rug. You can spend $10 billion building the most advanced AI physics tutor in the history of human civilization.
Right.
But if the 15-year-old sitting in front of that screen hasn't eaten protein in 2 days, or if they are terrified because they are going back to an abusive home, the cognitive transmission just fails. The technology cannot overcome the biological deficit.
It really can't. And this brings us full circle to the diagnostic power of the plumb line. The blueprint states, diagnose before you condemn.
Okay, unpack that.
Right now, society condemns an underfunded school when their test scores are low. But under this new framework, if every school in the country finally has the exact same baseline curriculum, the same brilliant AI instructional layer, and the same assessments, the measurement becomes intellectually honest. If a specific school is still showing massive failure rates despite having the exact same digital plumb line as the wealthy suburb, the AI data forces us to look at the physical environment.
It isolates the variable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The data will essentially scream at the administrators. The curriculum is perfect, the cognitive pacing is optimal, therefore the failure is environmental. It forces society to acknowledge that the kids in this zip code are suffering from food insecurity, or the building is overcrowded, or there is a local public health crisis. You can no longer blame a teacher for failing to miraculously personalize learning for 30 kids, and you can no longer blame a school for failing when the students are starving.
First build the plumb line, then measure,
Yeah.
then feed the children. It uses high technology not to escape physical reality, but to clear away the bureaucratic noise so we can actually see and fix the basic human needs.
Precisely.
All right, so let's project ourselves into this future. We've done it. We've digitized the curriculum into a living commons. We have AI handling the individualized pacing, instantly diagnosing cognitive gaps.
Right.
We have fully funded the physical buildings. The kids are fed, and human teachers are acting as incredible mentors. The blueprint argues that once you solve all of those problems, you instantly slam face first into a final, massive, invisible wall, a structural barrier so deeply ingrained in our society that we barely even notice it.
It's a calendar.
The traditional American school calendar, the 180-day illusion.
This is where the structural redesign moves from manipulating knowledge to manipulating time itself. The blueprint points out that our current 180-day school year, with its massive 3-month summer vacation, is essentially an inherited industrial habit.
It really is.
We treat it like it's a biological imperative, like a law of physics, but it is a completely arbitrary construct.
I want to walk through the actual math that the blueprint lays out, because when I read this section, I actually had to stop, pull out my phone, and calculate it myself just to believe it.
The numbers are shocking.
It is staggering how inefficient we are with time. Let's look at the numbers. A standard calendar year has 365 days. If you remove the weekends, you are left with roughly 260 weekdays.
Okay.
The current American school year utilizes roughly 180 of those weekdays.
Which leaves 80 completely unused weekdays every single year.
80 days. Almost a third of the workable year where the educational system simply turns off the lights and walks away. The blueprint asks a pretty devastating question. Why does the formalized cognitive development of a child just disappear for months at a time?
It doesn't make sense.
The child's brain doesn't hibernate. The real world doesn't pause. Why are we chained to this long summer dead zone?
To solve this, the blueprint proposes a full-year learning architecture. Now, the immediate panic people have is that this means turning childhood into a dystopian sweatshop where kids are grinding away at math worksheets 365 days a year.
Right, no summer vacation ever.
But it doesn't mean abolishing weekends, and it doesn't mean abolishing vacations. In fact, it models out a highly humane, highly efficient rhythm. Let's look at the math of the new architecture.
Okay, let's play out the scenario the text provides. Let's say we completely abandon the massive 3-month summer break. Instead, we give students a very generous, frequent rhythm of rest. Let's say they get 2 full weeks off at the end of every single quarter. 2 weeks in the fall, 2 weeks in the winter, 2 weeks in the spring, and 2 weeks in the summer.
That is 8 weeks of vacation. 40 weekdays of pure, uninterrupted time off.
Right. So you take the 260 total weekdays in a year, you subtract those 40 vacation days, and you are left with 220 instructional days.
Yes.
Compared to the old 180-day industrial model, you have just organically added 40 instructional days to every single academic year without exhausting the student.
Now, scale that time over the lifespan of a child's education. If you add 40 extra days a year and you multiply that across a standard 13-year path from kindergarten through 12th grade, you recover 520 instructional days.
And if you divide those 520 recovered days by the traditional 180-day school year, you get 2.88.
Oh.
You recover almost 3 entire traditional school years of learning time just by utilizing the calendar logically and taking 2 weeks off a quarter.
And the blueprint notes that if a district opted for a slightly tighter schedule, say 1 week off per quarter instead of 2, the compounding math recovers over 4 full school years.
It's insane. It's like we've been running a massive vital factory, but we deliberately unplug all the machines for a quarter of the year because of some agrarian harvest schedule from the 19th century that doesn't even apply to 99% of the population anymore.
It's completely outdated.
We are leaving years of human cognitive potential completely on the table.
But the inefficiency of the calendar isn't just a mathematical problem. It is an active, aggressive driver of societal inequality.
Now, so
The blueprint attacks the summer dead zone, not just because it's a waste of time, but because it actively harms vulnerable children. Let's look at what actually happens mechanically during a 3-month summer break. How does a wealthy family handle the summer dead zone?
Well, they privatize the education.
Exactly.
They fill the void with cash. They send their kids to robotics camp, space camp, immersion language trips to Europe. They hire private math tutors to keep their skills sharp. They visit the Smithsonian. The learning never actually stops. It just shifts from the public sector to the private sector.
Exactly. The wealthy child's brain stays engaged. Now look at a family living below the poverty line. During those same 3 months, the public safety net completely vanishes.
The parents are working double shifts, so there is a lack of adult supervision.
Right.
There is no money for robotics camp. More importantly, there is sudden food insecurity because the kid isn't getting the 2 guaranteed meals a day from the school cafeteria.
And academically, they suffer from what researchers call the summer slide. Because they aren't engaging with the material for months, the cognitive pathways degrade.
They literally lose ground.
They do. They lose a significant percentage of the math and reading skills they gained the previous spring. So when September rolls around, the wealthy child has moved 2 steps forward and the poor child has slid 1 step backward. The summer break is an engine that magnifies the wealth gap every single year.
But under the full-year learning architecture, that engine is dismantled. A rhythm of 9 weeks on, 2 weeks off keeps the knowledge warm. It preserves continuity.
And because we have the AI instructional layer, even during that 2-week break, the AI tutor could send a fun 5-minute daily puzzle to the student's phone just to keep the cognitive engine idling.
Oh, that's smart.
The AI ensures the foundation never completely stalls out. The full-year calendar is ultimately about time equity.
But when you combine these 2 massive structural changes, the recovered time of the full-year calendar and the hyper-efficiency of the AI instructional layer, you trigger an inevitable paradigm-breaking consequence. Right. Because if a kid is learning faster with AI and they have 3 extra years of calendar time to do it, they are going to finish way earlier. Which brings us to the destruction of seat time.
This is the operational climax of the blueprint. The old educational model is defined by seat time.
Meaning what?
Seat time means you sit in a chair in a specific room for exactly 180 days. When the calendar year ends, you are moved to the next grade on a conveyor belt, regardless of what you actually absorbed. The measurement is endurance, not comprehension.
Remain in this grade until the Earth completes 1 revolution around the sun. It has nothing to do with the brain.
The new model replaces seat time with mastery. Once you have the plumb line, the absolute measurable standard of what constitutes foundational K-12 knowledge, the calendar is no longer the cage.
Right.
The blueprint argues, move when mastery is proven. If an AI-tutored student masters the entire 5th grade math curriculum in 5 months, why on earth should they sit in a chair for 7 more months waiting for the calendar to catch up?
It's cognitive imprisonment.
Exactly. And the math is undeniable. Because of the recovered calendar time and the elimination of instructional bottlenecks via AI, the blueprint states plainly that a vast number of students could complete the entire K-12 foundational plumb line by age 14, 15, or 16.
Okay, I need to stop you here because I can hear parents screaming at their radios right now.
I'm sure they are.
The idea of a 14 or 15-year-old graduating high school sounds terrifying. People picture kicking a 15-year-old out the door, handing them a diploma, and saying, "Congratulations, you know calculus. Good luck out there in the brutal adult economy. Go get a mortgage."
Yeah, that would be awful.
That sounds wildly irresponsible. A 15-year-old brain is not fully developed. They need structure. They need guidance.
The blueprint completely agrees with that fear. It explicitly states that earlier completion of the academic foundation must never mean societal abandonment.
Okay, good.
Just because you finished the cognitive plumb line at 15 does not mean you were thrown into the corporate workforce. The blueprint introduces a vital structural concept called protected bridges.
Protected bridges.
Yes. The purpose of high school isn't just to warehouse young people until they magically turn 18. The goal is readiness.
So walk me through the mechanics of a protected bridge. A kid finishes the K-12 plumb line at 15. What physically happens to them the next morning?
They immediately transition into higher development pathways, but they do it within a publicly protected framework.
Like what?
They might move directly into a public community college to begin a pre-med track. They might enter an advanced trade school for green energy infrastructure. They can start an apprenticeship in advanced agricultural science or enter an AI engineering certification program.
Oh, wow.
They are doing college-level or professional-level work, but they're still under the mentorship and structural safety of the public educational system.
But here is the multi-million-dollar question. How do we pay for a 15-year-old to go to trade school or college? Higher education is insanely expensive. We already have a massive student debt crisis. Are we just shifting the debt burden onto younger kids?
This is where the economic elegance of the entire blueprint snaps into focus. How do we pay for it? We already are.
Wait, what?
Think about the current taxpayer model.
Yeah.
The public has already budgeted, collected taxes, and committed to fund that specific child's education for 13 years, from K through 12.
Right.
If that student utilizes the AI plumb line and the full-year calendar to achieve mastery in 10 years, there are 3 years of public funding still legally attached to that child.
Oh, my God.
The public was already going to spend tens of thousands of dollars babysitting that student in a high school chair for 3 more years. The blueprint demands that we take that unused funding and redirect it to pay for the protected bridge.
So the money saved by shortening their K-12 seat time pays for their college or trade school.
Exactly. A 15-year-old masters the foundation, and then they enter a nursing prep program or an advanced manufacturing apprenticeship, completely debt-free.
That is incredible.
We take the wasted time and the wasted money of the old industrial model and we convert it into real debt-free professional or academic formation.
There is a quote from the text that perfectly captures this. That is not rushing childhood. That is respecting mastery.
Yes.
That framing changes everything. We are fundamentally shifting the purpose of the teenage years from a stagnant holding pattern to an active, debt-free launchpad. And this brings us to the grand convergence. The final act of this blueprint is how it stacks all these separate ideas on top of each other to create a completely new reality.
It is a convergence of 3 distinct, interlocking forms of equity.
Okay, let's lay them out.
First, you have knowledge equity. By utilizing the AI-driven educational commons, every single child, regardless of zip code, gets the exact same world-class living plumb line of instruction.
Right, the common floor.
Second, you have time equity. By implementing the full-year calendar, you erase the summer dead zone, keep knowledge warm, and stop the wealthy from using the calendar to buy an advantage.
That's the 40 extra days a year.
Exactly. And third, economic equity. The massive financial savings from digitizing the core curriculum and shortening K-12 occupancy are forcefully redirected to feed the physical child, repair the school building, and completely pay for public higher education and trade schools.
It fundamentally changes the questions we are allowed to ask about education. Under the old, broken model, the system asked, what can this district afford? The new model demands, what should every child be guaranteed?
Exactly.
The old system asks, how long has the student sat in this chair? The new model asks, what has the student mastered?
It is a total refusal to accept that human learning must be defined by scarcity. The old system was trapped by scarcity. Scarce local tax dollars, scarce human teacher bandwidth, scarce calendar days.
We were just rationing it.
Yes. Artificial intelligence breaks the scarcity of personalized instruction. The full-year calendar breaks the scarcity of time. And redirecting the budget breaks the scarcity of opportunity.
The blueprint summarizes this entire philosophy with a final directive that I think really captures the sheer scale of the ambition. It says, first, build the plumb line, then measure, then feed the children, then expand the schools. The old calendar taught the child to wait. The educational commons teaches the child to rise.
It's a magnificent synthesis.
Yeah.
It really proves that embracing high technology doesn't mean surrendering to machines or dehumanizing our children.
No, it doesn't.
It means using the most powerful intellectual tools we have ever created to clear away the bureaucratic waste so we can finally build a continuous, debt-free pathway from basic literacy to advanced societal contribution.
It elevates the student's mind, it clarifies the human teacher's role as a moral mentor, and it maximizes the public's financial investment.
Actually,
It is a profound, almost dizzying reimagining of what a society actually owes to its next generation. To quickly recap the ground we've covered today, we started by looking at the injustice of the X-ray machine, the diagnostic failure of the ZIP code purchasing lottery. We conceptually tore down the static, dead textbook and replaced it with the living, breathing educational commons. We embraced AI not as a gimmick, but as a tireless, hyper-diagnostic faculty layer.
we redefine the human teacher.
Right. Not as a lecturer, but as a vital physical mentor and community anchor. We did the math to reclaim almost 4 years of lost cognitive time by fixing the calendar. And finally, we built a publicly funded, debt-free bridge for teenagers to enter trades or college based on actual mastery rather than arbitrary seat time.
It is a complete architectural rebuild.
It truly is. But before we wrap up today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. Something to mull over as you go about your day. Something that builds on everything we just discussed, but pushes it just a little bit further into the unknown.
Okay.
This blueprint paints a beautiful, highly logical picture of a 15-year-old mastering the K-12 plumb line and then smoothly crossing a publicly funded bridge into a physical trade school or a university engineering program or an AI certification track.
Right, the protected bridge.
But consider the speed of reality. If the living frontier of the curriculum is truly living, and it is updating at the explosive speed of artificial intelligence, the real-world economy is going to accelerate right alongside it. AI is going to invent entirely new scientific disciplines, new energy sectors, and new industries every few months.
Oh, wow.
What happens when the AI diagnostic layer looks at a brilliant 14-year-old student, analyzes their knowledge graph, and recognizes that this child's true mastery, their absolute perfect aptitude, lies in a profession that was literally just invented 3 weeks ago?
That's wild to think about.
If AI updates human knowledge faster than traditional universities or trade schools can physically pour concrete, design curriculums, and hire professors to build programs for them, who builds the bridge for the student whose perfect career is only 6 weeks old? Will our physical brick-and-mortar higher education system actually be able to keep up with the speed of a living K-12 plumb line? Or will the AI eventually have to build the bridge itself?
That is the ultimate frontier question. Because if the foundation accelerates, the house has to be built faster.
I want you to think about that today. Think about the plumb line. Think about the calendar. And think about what we are actually measuring when we look at the next generation. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the future of learning. We'll catch you next time.